As many others, I originally played Cyberpunk 2077 on the PlayStation 4 platform. I experienced the game for the first time on the old generation of consoles, Generation 8. And my goodness, that was a travesty on great proportions. All those bugs, performance issues, excessive texture popping were not at all exaggerated. I saw it all on my very own playthrough, and this was after substantial patches, as I'd only played the game in December 2021, about a year after its initial release. So I recently had a substantial upgrade and went on over to PC. I upgraded to the AMD Radeon 7900 GRE and the Intel 14700KF chip. I'm now blessed to have the ability to play Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K 60 frames per second. I'm able to achieve that with some upscaling, but using FSR at a quality upscaling level, so we aren't experiencing too much artifacting and none of that. And I personally am not a huge fan of frame generation, so I personally avoid that as I don't like the latency issues. So experiencing this game at this level truly shows me where those high ratings from reviewers came from at launch. I now truly believe that this game definitely should have never ever made it to the PlayStation 4 platform. It's an entirely different experience on better hardware, and you may think that the most significant change and was most notable was in the gameplay, the better frames, and of course the much smoother fluidity. While those aspects are definitely substantially improved, I found that the new graphical settings that were allowed to me crucially enhance the quiet moments, the conversations we have before and after a job. I'm finally able to experience Night City in all of its glory. The immersion that was talked about finally clicked. The atmosphere just simply consumes you.
It should have been me down there with Zomi, not you.
It's so good you're here. Don't know what I'd do without you, V. Really.
How would you be if not a secret agent and master of disguise?
An actor.
Saying you got no dirt on your hands?
There are no clean hands, but it is important how they become dirty.
Damn man, it's truly a damn shame that my first experience on this game was on the PlayStation 4 platform, as the gulf in class is, absolutely crazy. But it was still an enjoyable experience, and my first time around Night City was definitely a great time. But the rabbit can only be pulled out of the hat so many times, and I've seen this trick before. Cyberpunk's original tale is embedded strongly in my mind, which is actually quite a compliment, but that has resulted in me being less excited about the game this time around. So my excitement is all but reserved for the DLC expansion that was restricted from old gen consoles, Phantom Liberty.
Unit lost. I repeat.
Whoa! Of course you're here!
After finally getting my hands on this all-encompassing DLC that was hidden from us on the previous gen, I'm definitely impressed, and it is a solid experience, but it doesn't reach to the quality that is found in the original experience of Cyberpunk 2077, but it's a serviceable expansion that if you're somebody who's going to finally get the game for the first time now, you might as well get the entire package altogether. Dogtown is Pacifica's long-lost cousin that has wiggled its way back out of exile. With the premise of possibly having a real solution to the bioship, V hops into an espionage-filled adventure to save the president. But everything goes bad when your fixer goes dark. Now of course there's much more to the story than what I've mentioned right there, but we'll go into those details once we get to the spoiler section of the video. So cdprojektred have set the stage in this garbage dump that is Dogtown to be the setting of this DLC. Not only is there a brand new main quest to indulge into, there are brand new side gigs, weapons, and a new section added to your character called relic abilities, which can be upgraded. The biggest gameplay change that I say this expansion uses is that there's a lot more traversal. By this I mean you'll be exploring the world upwardly and downwardly, vertically is what I mean. You'll be grappling on ledges, panels, fences, a lot more to reach your next objective. It's noticeable because the base game definitely doesn't use these mechanics much. It's definitely much more an alternative way for you to achieve your goals. Traversal was there, but it was mainly for alternative exits, alternative entrances, so these traversal sections, while are appreciated, are unfortunately quite janky due to the way that gameplay is handled. And while I mentioned the jankiness or stiffness, let's get right into talking about the problems I've experienced and noticed in this playthrough of Cyberpunk 2077. The problem with choice. Now of course, Cyberpunk 2077 is a role-playing game, an RPG where choice is paramount, whether it be the story decisions you make during the story or the gameplay style and the multiple different options you have in creating your own V and the multiple builds that cdprojektred has provided for us. What is ultimately sacrificed when your main goal is to provide the player with immense options from a gameplay perspective is polish. This is not an issue that only plagues Cyberpunk, but it's an issue that plagues the entire genre. Most RPGs are known to be stiff, janky messes that have pretty much just okay, serviceable combats that sometimes is even terrible. This is fine depending on a game-to-game basis, but I think this becomes an issue for Cyberpunk. Now, get me, understand this completely. Cyberpunk doesn't have bad combat by absolutely any means. In fact, it's quite serviceable and better than most other games. But the thing is, I think that giving players this immense choice and putting all their energies and putting it all into different boxes detracts from the overall experience, because this results in the game having overall less polish and a less high quality combat experience. Let's consider something that I mentioned before, my new favorite parts of the game from upgrading and playing this game on a gaming PC. The slow moments, the conversations. This is quite possibly the best and most immersive game I've ever seen handle dialogue. The first person view makes everything so intimate. The artists definitely went over the top considering how amazing every single interior looks, from the buildings to the cars, everything looks immaculate. Then my immersion is completely shattered as I'm now jolted into a janky combat experience. Now, as I said, it's not bad by any chance. Cyberpunk doesn't have bad combat. Because of this futuristic setting, it probably has the coolest weapons and weapon mods I've ever seen in a video game. But the gulf in class is noticeable, and I know why it happened. This is the consequence of being spread too thin, then things begin to slide. Considering the experience that the company was trying to create, doing less can very regularly result in more accurately better. For example, I'll give you an example of something that could be taken away and replaced. Take away crafting entirely and put all those resources into making the open world more immersive. It's understandable as this is cdprojektred's first time making a modern open world experience, but being beaten by open world mechanics by a game called San Andreas that came out in 2005 is definitely a tough pill to swallow. If they have a better open world created back in 2005, you've got some work to do. For example, cut down the weapon variety by 50%, perhaps take out melee weapons entirely, then put all that effort into improving the combat. I know this is a wild and controversial take. Taking away the options given to the players? What in the world do you mean? Why would you want to take away player choice? But the reason I'm saying this is that the less choices we have, the higher quality of an experience we're going to have. A simple example that I can draw from is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. If you're somebody who's played the Dark Souls series, you'll know that that game has an immense amount of weapons and builds that you can hop into, giving you a great and huge amount of replay value. But the thing is, while I definitely enjoyed those RPGs a lot, the weapon variety was definitely great. But Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is quite possibly my favorite game ever from Software, because the combat style is singular and they're able to put all their efforts into one combat style, giving possibly and creating the best combat style I've ever enjoyed in a game, and I can just imagine if they were able to apply that same amount of focus into Cyberpunk 2077, take away an immense amount of the combat choice and put it into a few types of weapons, perhaps would have gotten a much more exciting and much more immersive gameplay experience. Keep the player choice in terms of the story, keep the player choice in terms of the player decisions, but cut it down in terms of the combat so you can put more effort into polishing the experience you're trying to create. Now the question that you may ask is, okay, I'm somebody who's maybe completed the game and I'm thinking of coming back to Cyberpunk 2077. Is Phantom Liberty a good enough value proposition for me to sink deeper into my wallet, or to finally come back and relearn the controls to experience this DLC? Phantom Liberty is a decent and good time, and if you're somebody who just wants more Cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty does definitely deliver, but it is not a game that is unforgettable or an experience that you have to play to have the full Cyberpunk experience. It's good stuff, and if you're somebody who's a super fan, definitely hop into this. But if you're somebody who is satisfied with your experience with Cyberpunk 2077's campaign, you're going to be just fine, I'm being honest. Now that we've discussed the bulk of those things, let's go into spoiler territory so we can deeply discover and discuss Phantom Liberty. Now, the main quest is just fine, there's some cool things happening, there's some cool new upgrades that are available to you, and it definitely does complement the base game, but I'd say that the issue is that the basis of the story definitely relies you on caring about Songbird far too much. This is a woman that we just met. Now, for me personally, I didn't care too much about Songbird or her fates. Considering the amount of time that I spent with her, she failed to attach to me emotionally in any sense. I definitely would have honestly preferred the experience pretty much focusing on the president and the substantial amount of the story being focused on trying to keep her alive. I found President Myers to be a far more interesting character than Songbird or even Reed. Being entirely responsible for her exfil would have been much more interesting while tackling the very diverse and complicated politics of Dogtown, including Mr. Hands. For me, would have been a much more interesting plot. I was personally much more likely to put a bullet in Song than save her. She lied to me, lied to everybody, and went crazy when she couldn't manipulate the entire situation. I chose to betray Song, side with Reed, then I killed Song by pulling the plug. From a gameplay perspective, the final mission to defeat Songbird was definitely on the drier side. They did kind of give you a horror experience by giving me that completely unkillable robot, and there was some cool experiences that they were able to give you. I did like that Cyberpunk 2077 definitely did try to be experimental with the way they handled the final mission, but from a gameplay perspective, it was dry, and I'll be honest, it was boring. Maybe the other endings had some more interesting or entertaining gameplay, but yeah man, it was just aight. The new sidekicks that are added to the game were nice, and Mr. Hand's development as he's pushed into the forefront is definitely quite interesting. Now Reed, who's being played by Idris Elba right here, is kind of a deadpan character, but that's of course by design. While it was cool to see Idris Elba in the game, seeing him in Phantom Liberty didn't elevate the quality of the experience by any means possible. He of course isn't to blame, as the script forced him to be pretty rigid in his character. But even then, I found the performance from Songbird and even Myers to be far more compelling. To me, it just shows me that you truly do not need big names to be leading males or women in gaming. As long as the voice actor is talented and the writing is good, all is well. Now, in my personal opinion, Keanu Reeves and Idris Elba definitely probably provide the weakest voice acting performances compared to most of the characters that are mainstays in Cyberpunk 2077. This may seem controversial, but to me this absolutely seems the truth. Whether it's the base game, Jackie, Panam, Wakako, Takimura, all of those individuals provide much more interesting and compelling voice acting experiences than these career actors. Now, I don't know, maybe it's because they're not used to voice acting or whatnot, or the blame is to be put onto the writers for not giving them opportunities to truly show their acting chops. But all I'm saying is that this is just a reminder and shows to me that you truly don't need leading males or leading females to make a great experience. As long as the writing is sensational and as long as the voice actors are talented, you can put whoever in any character to play that role exceptionally well. Now, I'm definitely sure the addition of Keanu Reeves and Idris Elba definitely improved the sales of the game, but their inclusions to the concoction were not at all essential. Kurt Hansen definitely seemed interesting, but we didn't have enough time with him on screen for us to truly enjoy him. If we're to compare the expansions in The Witcher 3, whether it be Blood and Wine or Hearts of Stone, Phantom Liberty is definitely significantly below both of them in terms of quality. If you've never played Cyberpunk 2077, you might as well get this bundle. If you've played the original via old gen and want to double dip, I get that you want to experience this on your next gen console or PC, but you aren't missing out on too much. Phantom Liberty has a decent amount of content, and for an expansion compared to other games, it definitely is quite solid and serviceable. But in my personal opinion, Phantom Liberty can be comfortably skipped and you won't be missing out on anything generational by any means possible. In my personal opinion, Phantom Liberty individually gets a 6 out of 10. But if we're considering a final rating for the entire experience of Cyberpunk 2077 start to finish, playing this on a good gaming PC or on a next gen console, I would give Cyberpunk 2077 an 8 out of 10. It's a great experience and you'll definitely enjoy yourself with this game, as you well know. But the DLC definitely is kind of forgettable and can be skipped if you want to spend your money elsewhere. I thank you for joining me for another video. This was me returning to Cyberpunk 2077 on a new gen PC. Thanks for joining me and I'll see you on the next video. I'm Explicit Sage and I'll check you on the next one.